Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session. My name is Laura Citron, and I'm Chief Executive of London and Partners. We are all here today because we care about open innovation, how larger organisations partner with smaller businesses and universities and innovators. Those of us from larger organisations care about open innovation because it's all about how we can find new solutions, new markets, new sources of growth. And those of us from the startup community care because it's such an important pathway to scale for emerging businesses. London and Partners is the business growth and destination agency for London. And our mission is to create economic growth that is resilient and sustainable and inclusive. And so for us, the way that innovation works in our city and the interface between different kinds of organisations around innovation is really key. If open innovation works well and it's an inclusive process, it has huge benefits. Today, we released new data with Dealroom showing that 2020 was actually a record year for venture capital investment in London tech, and that there are record levels of funds ready to be invested in our innovative businesses next year, which is a really exciting good news story amongst all this doom and gloom. And what's really interesting is that the sectors that are leading that growth, fintech, health tech, enterprise tech for remote working, food service tech, show that our innovation sector isn't just amazingly resilient to have grown in an exceptionally difficult year, but it's also part of the solution to some of these really big challenges of our post-COVID world. So last year, we launched an Open Innovation Fellowship programme, which some of you are participating in, which is an executive education programme for senior innovation leaders that we are running jointly with the Royal College of Arts. And you'll hear more about that from my colleague Janet later on. But this series is really about shining a light on some of the really exciting and inspiring stories that are happening in open innovation in London at the moment. So today you'll be hearing from some large corporates and from some startups and scale-ups in London who are using their partnerships to really drive both of their businesses in mutually beneficial ways. So we'll be kicking off with a conversation between Nick de León from the RCA and Amali de Alwis, who is the Managing Director of Microsoft for Startups. And then we'll hear from BT Sport and Sceenic on how their collaboration has helped them to meet changing customer expectations. And then we'll hear from Olio and Tesco on their partnership to have real impact this year. So if you have any questions, please stick them in the chat. Please keep your mics on mute. We all know how to do it. And so up first, handing over to Nick.
Laura, thank you very much indeed. It really is a pleasure to be here with Amali and with all the team at London and Partners today. And very much looking forward to our conversation together. I think it's absolutely terrific news to hear that the 2020 has been, despite all that's been happening, has been a kind of record year for investment in startups and other innovation activities in London. And that's terrific news, because our conversation today with Amali is very much around the innovation agenda. And in setting this up, I found that Amali and I had a kind of shared, though distance by time is probably evident in the images you're seeing here. But we had a lot of things in common. I had worked on IBM's very first PC. I was terribly young then. I'm not a teenager, but I was quite young as a young engineer. And it was really exciting when Microsoft was brought on board to kind of put the heart into it. Now, I looked, Amali, I looked this morning at the market cap of Microsoft, which were those pesky guys in Seattle to us. And there was I as a hardware engineer working on this PC. Your market cap is $1.63 trillion as of this morning. IBM's is 1/15 of that. So clearly you've been innovating for the last 40 something years in an incredible way. But right now we're moving into a period of amazing innovation. So I was just keen to get your view here of how you see 2021 playing out, and how important is innovation to you? And then we can talk about how open innovation is going to help power that. But I think you've got a lot of heritage of it to start with.
Goodness, that's big shoes, isn't it? That's a lot of history to live up to. But no, it is incredible, and I think, looking to this year, I think, for you, for anyone, looking back over times which have been difficult times, when we've seen, so many businesses struggle and so many challenges, and so, the world change. Our understanding of the world has changed, the way that we sort of see the world, value the world. We're talking about not just the sort of COVID circumstances, but, Black Lives Matter and, Me Too and all of these types of societal changes. But with all that change comes some incredible opportunities, right? And I think innovation is what blossoms out of those ambers of, the businesses which have struggled and the old companies which have shut down. Is the new space. It's a space for new ideas and for new reflections on the world and creation of new products and services based on what the new world looks like. So yeah, I think we're in for a really exciting time actually around innovation. I think in the next couple of years, certainly.
Yeah, I'm assuming as well that to use the kind of terminology of the great economist Joseph Schumpeter, he talked about kind of creative destruction. And my sense right now is we are in such a moment where that is happening. And you must see that with new companies emerging and new needs from your clients, and having to find new ways of satisfying those needs.
Yeah, 100%. And there's something which we see a lot in, I think, some of the startups, obviously, that we work with, which is, startups who I'm literally having conversations with, who started in, let's say, September, right? And we're talking in the middle of the crisis, where it seems like surely no one who has any sense will be starting a new business. And yet you have these companies who are popping up saying, we've been looking at the world around us. We suddenly saw this opportunity. This wasn't being served. The world has changed and something is different. And seeing that as an opportunity to start a business, to develop new products and services, to really think about, how they work and offer products. And also, I think for incumbent companies, like I've just literally got off the phone with a company called Fiscal, who really, really amazing company. They basically offer accounting tools for small businesses and large businesses, do a lot of white labeling as well. And we're talking about things like, things they had introduced, like payment phasing for, the Klarna type of formatting, which they had never thought, didn't have a lot of traction. In January last year was pretty much just a function that they had added. I think it's a little add-on to some of their clients. And it has been their biggest selling product this year. It's been their biggest selling sort of function this year, because suddenly these things which, they never thought, okay, that people don't really need this, or they may not need it as much, are growing and being successful. So yeah, very interesting to see all of that happening.
Now, I've always felt that Microsoft, was a very different kind of company, clearly, to what IBM in the 1980s was like Google and Apple put together in terms of scale. And the US government had antitrust case against it to try and break it up. It was so dominant. But in terms of the market cap, it was the equivalent of Google and Apple together today, or I should say Google and Microsoft, forgive me. But of course, what you were doing, and for the PC, it was a real breakthrough for IBM to go outside and work with Microsoft. And 40 years ago, that was immensely controversial. But I always admired Microsoft because you had a kind of open innovation approach right from the get-go. You kind of saw yourself as someone that you weren't always open in the sense of your systems being open, but you were keen to work with others to build things on top of what you had. Now, I'm just going to say, how would you kind of frame open innovation, how it's advanced and changed in Microsoft today?
I think it's come leaps and bounds, actually, even in the last, I would say, sort of 5-10 years. And definite, I think, hat tip to Satya, our leader in chief, for his sort of philosophy behind this, which is very much that there is, we can all be protectionist, right? We can have our product, we can protect our IP or hold it close to our chest and, say that we're the only people that, can provide this and you have to come to us and no one else. But I think what he realized, and I think, what is definitely the philosophy of Microsoft today, is that there is much more benefit in opening things up. Because actually what you do by opening things up is that you actually allow others to also take ownership of innovation, to also take a responsibility for growth, and to build on each other's success, right? And this is kind of the fundamental thing, which is, do you want to always be the person who is creating something from scratch? Or do you want others to take what you have done, made it better, and then you build on top of what they have improved already? So you create this environment, this sort of virtuous circle of innovation, I think, working with other parties. And, you know, just talking to the way that exhibits in Microsoft Business, anything from how we do partner sales. So partner sales is based on the philosophy that if you are a small company who's building your products and services on Microsoft products and services, it is in our interest that you are more successful, because when you are successful, we are successful with you. And therefore we offer free products, services, tools, benefits to support, in this case, startups, which is the teams I work with, to actually grow their products, which are being built on Azure, for example. And those are done for free. We don't take fees, we don't do anything else, because we know that if they create better products and services, it's good for us, it's good for them, and it's good for our mutual clients. So it's good for the whole ecosystem to kind of develop and improve in that way. And the other thing I think has been, within technology, we have a long history of open source, right? This is part of the sort of the identity of the tech industry. And so I think, it's nothing new to sort of think of this idea of you can put something into the ethers, you can put something into the public sphere for others to take and sort of make better and do good things with. And even if you look at, a lot of our, the programming languages, so many of those languages which were open source languages or frameworks which are open sourced. And, we see the benefits that has brought as far as the development and the continued innovation and growth of those products and services when you effectively crowdsource innovation in that way. So yeah, I think hugely exciting way to kind of approach things.
In terms of driving growth inside your business, is there any way of assessing how much your business has been able to grow, or is it as a consequence of this? And have some of these partnerships taken you into wholly new markets, perhaps, that you were I mean, you seem to be in every single market, as I can see these days. But has it been able to give you an entree into places you otherwise wouldn't be able to reach?
Yeah, I mean, as far as what role does it play within the Microsoft business? It's a core part of what generates our growth, right? Is the work that we do with third parties, with other companies, and sometimes when we talk about, for example, the Microsoft sellers, these are individuals who are incentivized not only to sell Microsoft products, but also third-party products. Some of those products actually conflict or compete directly with Microsoft products, and yet we sell them side by side because of the philosophy of they are all just helping the ecosystem and helping our products and helping our development. As far as that point to moving into new markets, new sectors, I think probably all the time. And obviously some of this comes through acquisition. I mean, Microsoft bought LinkedIn a number of years ago. That was something completely new as far as, a new area to move in. We collaborate a lot as far as obviously the technology side of things and thinking about how AI plays a role in these types of things. So I think those are absolutely areas that we have grown into. And I'm sure, partnerships, certainly as far as sort of market growth, are a key way. When we move into new markets, we partner with people to do that, because we know that in most cases we can do better with, two plus parties than we would be able to do with one. So each person or each party brings something to the table, which, neither party can do effectively on their own, but through the collaboration, through the partnership, you drive actually, growth for both ends of things. So yeah, definitely.
Now, in a way, we can think about, your relationship with your partners as kind of both upstream, which is those partners you work with who create new capability and build on top of your platform, and those partners that you work with downstream who distribute those and are able to reach into markets. And then you complement that by then, through acquisition like LinkedIn, reaching into whole new domains with already very established companies that can use your core technologies. But that wasn't necessarily the reason that you bought them, at least initially, but they took you into places. Now, do you have very different programs that support all of those? Could you describe some of those, perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, Nick, I find new Microsoft Teams every week, so I don't know if I would ever do it justice as far as the full landscape. But certainly, yeah, we have different parts of the business who work with all of these different partners in different ways. And often we will span different partners even within the team. So for example, the types of partners that I work with, I will work with VCs and investment bodies. So these are companies who are investing in startups, who are thinking about how they help financial growth, as well as obviously the strategic growth of those companies. I will work with systems integrators and cloud solution provider partners. So these are people who are basically either helping businesses with their technology and their growth, or who are effectively resellers of Microsoft products and services, and also help other parties with their growth and their development. I can work with internal teams. We have our ISV teams. So these are the independent software vendor teams who help small companies, again, who are selling products and services to sort of grow their business with Microsoft tools and services. As well as sort of, a whole myriad of, media partners, or, accelerators and incubators and all of these other people. And, hopefully I think all of us have a role to play in, helping each other's businesses to grow and to become more innovative and to learn from each other.
I can imagine your LinkedIn network is very extensive. I mean, we used to talk about having our little kind of black book of names, but I think yours must be spectacularly interesting with all of those different groups of people. Now, open innovation sometimes implies that readiness and willingness to be open to disrupt yourself. Microsoft has managed phenomenally in terms of incremental innovation, but it's never been afraid to go in and start trying to disrupt markets. Again, I was on the receiving end of a lot of that as you kind of move from the desktop upstream into the server business, and you've had forays into the telecommunications sector as well, of course, as part of that. But this willingness to disrupt yourself, and disruption is never taken easily inside. Would you like to share with us some of the challenges you've had in delivering open innovation? Because I remember a lot in IBM, but it'd be interesting to hear some of yours, and then we can do a bit of compare and contrast.
Yeah, and I think, these are obviously sort of challenges that I've come across. This is not just with Microsoft, but, companies I've worked with outside. And I think these are kind of common challenges. And especially when we're talking about big companies, one of the biggest things that we always have to keep an eye out for is hubris, right? It's thinking that you are, understandably top of your game, that you have nothing to learn, that what your role is to teach and to help other people learn. But you forget that, you are seeing your world, and that there are definitely other people who are doing things better, quicker, more efficiently, more effectively than you are. This is something which comes into play not just in partnerships, but also I think when you look at things like acquisitions. So, a lot of tech companies obviously acquire companies for their innovation, for their ideas, for their products. And then how do you incorporate those companies into your business whilst also allowing yourself to be changed by them? And I think that's one of the biggest things, because the change isn't just an extra, SKU on your product line. It is to change with everything, change ways of working, to change your philosophies with your clients, to change your sort of employment sort of attitudes. And I think that's really the thing, which, especially for big companies, that is always a big challenge, right? Because you're just a bigger company than whatever you acquire. How do you continue to be open? How do you continue to learn and to respect other people's views and ideas, and not be close-minded and kind of arrogant, I think, and it's a risk. And I think especially in tech, I say this kindly, there are plenty of amazing people in tech, but we can at times be arrogant, I think, as well. So it's something we do need to be careful about.
Would there be some advice? We've got companies who are coming into this session today who are at different stages in the journey into open innovation. Are there any particular points of advice or guidance you would give them? Can you help them anticipate some of the challenges? I mean, I know myself from my previous experience, and also working with many companies these days, that when you go with an internal idea, you know how the procurement system works, you know how the finance guys work, you know how the legal team work. When you do open innovation and you bring in all these fresh organizations, they have to struggle often with all the resources inside. Are there some things that you might say, look, watch out for this, so people can plan as they ramp up open innovation right now?
I think really, and it's always interesting, because I think whether it's an open innovation process, whether it is a client acquisition process, whether it is a merger and partnership that you're going into, I think really having some, good research, structured conversations, and sort of a method to thinking about how you want to roll something out is really helpful. And to bring that to life a little bit. So when I was with Code First Girls, we took really, I guess, a sort of a human-centered design process. And I know you will have, done so much of this, obviously, as a leader within the service design side of things. But, you've really got to learn to ask the right questions. You've really, starting the process with just understanding what you're trying to achieve from this. What is the other party trying to achieve from this? When they're thinking about innovation, what do they mean by that? How do they want this to look? What makes them happy? Who do they report into? What are the decisions that they need to go through to create a business case? What are their sales cycles? What are their financial cycles? So all of these types of things which just help you to understand not only some of the personal motivations, and I think that is something really important, because when you're talking about selling something, when you're talking about whether it's selling a product or selling an idea, you're not just selling that to the company, you're selling that to a person, right? So understanding the person's motivations and what is important to them and what makes them look good, I think is really important. You then need to sort of understand what their business needs are, and it is that classic process of just understanding how they function, what they're hoping to get out of this. And together you can then get that understanding of, if you're talking about innovation, what does innovation look like to them? What is this innovation meant to fulfill? What's the gap in the market, or the idea, or the unmet need that, you're kind of getting to through this? So it's a very human journey, I think, innovation. And I think that's probably the biggest thing, which is, you do have to have structure, you have to have a method to it, but it's kind of really, just getting under the skin of the people and the company, which I think helps you to make sure that you're making the right choices about things.
It's interesting you should describe it as having both a framework and a process, putting in place the right kind of infrastructure, methods and programs that enable it, but actually fundamentally it is a human process. It's wonderful hearing it from Microsoft, and not to assume that there is any, but right at the heart of tech, we have a kind of people have a perception of people in big tech as being actually not necessarily embracing that human factor where in reality it is something which I think is very important. Do you have a few results of your kind of open innovation activities with startups that you could share with us, that just tell us briefly about, show us what kind of impact they can make, both to the profit and growth of your business, but also perhaps if you've got some that have made a social impact as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I think there's a nice sort of two-sided sort of story to that, which is, for example, we're currently running our AI for Social Impact program. So applications are open. If anyone's interested, please come and drop me a line and I can send you the link, or just obviously go and search for it. But this is a 4-month acceleration program. We focus on supporting businesses who have some sort of social impact in the world, and are specifically using AI to drive that innovation and drive that change in society. We've been running it for a few years. And for me, this was a wonderful project for a few reasons. Not only were we obviously working with some incredible companies, but actually it really was a 3-way collaboration between us as a startups team, our philanthropies and technology team within the Microsoft business, our third-party provider, one of our companies that we work with called the Social Tech Trust, who do amazing programs supporting businesses who are trying to use technology to create, a social purpose and meet a social purpose. And, between the 3 of us, we were basically covering the company's growth, so the commercial growth, the business growth, talking about the technology strategy and building AI and building tools, and then also talking about the social impact. So how do we actually create something which is not only beneficial, but is measurably beneficial as well? None of us could have done this alone. It took the 3 of us working together to drive and create a really, strong program, an incredible program, which was helping companies to innovate, to drive their businesses and create that right environment for them to cover everything that they need. And talking to the sort of the point 2 of that, which was, I guess, some of the companies coming out of that. So to name a couple of them. So one of them who I just saw yesterday had a lovely article in Bloomberg, a company called WeWalk, who developed a smart cane. So they basically created a cane for people with visual impairment, and rather than it just being, you know, a white cane which you use to navigate in a physical sense, is a smart cane. So you can ask it questions. You can ask it about your diary and what meetings you have. You can ask it for directions. You can ask it to book you cinema tickets, you know, whatever it is, or, you know, whatever you want to kind of do. But it really just is about that blurring of boundaries between the world of someone who has a sight impairment with the world of people who are do have sight, and kind of allowing some of those things which are designed for people with sight to come into people who don't have who have visual impairments in there as well. So for me, that's a, you know, wonderful example of, you know, how we, you know, from Microsoft side, helping them to develop their AI, their technologies, them putting on these ideas, and they were working with some incredible organizations, and one of their co-founders is blind as well. So, you know, his personal experience, his lived experience of going through that, and I think that's a great example.
Sense of scale as well that you've been able to do, from something very specialist to all the really important platform things. I know we could keep speaking for longer, but I know we've kind of gone a little
I know.
Amali, thank you so much for this.
I'm
going to come back to Laura now, and I'm sure we'll have more chance to talk, but thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much, Nick and Amali. It's been absolutely wonderful to have you both join us. Fantastic points there. I think in particular, it's just fantastic to see the breadth of activity and open innovation across Microsoft, which is just fantastic to see. Really, really positive. And obviously, you know, the impact, the philosophy of kind of really being open and opening everything up and building on one another's success, I think is a real, you know, a real message for everybody. So thank you so much for joining us, to you both. So hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Lauren Quigley and I'm the Head of Innovation Programmes at London & Partners, picking up the baton from Nick just there. So I work to make open innovation in London more effective and more inclusive by supporting large organisations to better understand and embrace the opportunity open innovation really presents, encouraging lateral and cross-sector thinking. So I'm delighted to introduce the next session, exploring how open innovation can be harnessed to really enhance customer experience. And I'm joined by two very exciting speakers this afternoon. The first being Jamie Heintos, CEO of BT Sport. So Jamie joined BT Sport in 2012 as the Chief Operating Officer to build the infrastructure, the broadcast chain and operating model ahead of launch. And a year later, BT Sport 1, BT Sport 2 and BT Sport ESPN all started broadcasting from the purpose-built studio facility on the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. Since then, BT Sport has expanded to 13 channel outlets to deliver the exclusive Champions League and Europa League coverage, as well as the launch of Europe's first 4K UHD sports channel. So welcome, Jamie. And joining Jamie, I'm delighted to welcome Jonathan Williams, co-founder and COO of Sceenic, an organisation that provides solutions to deliver interactive viewing experiences. So Sceenic empower media companies to really harness their watch together technology to create more engaging viewing experiences for their audiences. Prior to co-founding Sceenic, Jonathan worked in PR and rights across the music industry for 10 years with some of the most recognised artists across Latin America. So welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd love to kick off our conversation actually with a question for you, Jonathan, to give us sort of a bit of context. If you could tell us a little bit more about Sceenic and the technology and how it's used to really enhance customer experience.
Well, thank you, Lauren, for the space. Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure to share the space with Jamie as well. Well, about Sceenic, a little bit of our history. We started as a company back in 2013, but as a B2C company. So we had a platform where people were able to share content, to watch together content, but it was very early days. Then we pivoted in 2016 and we became a software company. So we decided to offer our technology to the media companies, right? Our technology, I'll explain it for people like me that I'm not a tech guy. Like, it's very simple. Is a video calling engine. So we're a video calling engine provider. That will be the most technical definition for it. Now, what is it, or how we define it? Like, watch together. So basically, our technology allows people to come together inside our clients' platforms and share the content they love, watch the content they love, but they're synchronized as well. So they can video chat, whilst watching the content. Now, what this technology or how this technology is used to enhance the experience inside our clients' platform, well, as I explain it always, like what we're trying to achieve is to bring that social aspect of sharing content and watching what we love, because the experiences used to be all separate in different platforms. Like, so if you were watching like a TV series with your friends, you were chatting on WhatsApp, on a WhatsApp group, or probably the interaction that about like something that you love was in Twitter. So it was separated, right? And what we're trying to do is to bring that social interaction within the same platform, so you don't have to leave. You can stay there with your friends. You can enjoy the content that you want without having to leave the platform. So that's how the technology is used nowadays to bring that social aspect into our clients' platforms.
Great. So yeah, it's really about kind of encouraging interaction between kind of those that are watching similar content and making sure that people have that space to share ideas and to share kind of their immediate perspectives, and perspective on that content. So coming to you now, Jamie, how did the partnership with Sceenic kind of come about? What challenge essentially were you looking to address, and how did it lead to the partnership with Sceenic? I understand it kind of originated through your innovation lab, so I don't know if you could tell us a little bit.
Afternoon, everyone. Hello, Jonathan. I've just realised BT Sport is only 1 year older than Sceenic, which is quite interesting actually. Yeah, so we've coming into a very difficult market. We've always prided ourselves on two things. Firstly is innovation, so understanding the customer and giving them the experiences that we know they want. But secondly, and most importantly, is about partnerships. BT Sport, we're actually very small. We're in the Olympic Park. There's only about 176 of us, and the strength of BT Sport has been about the BT Sport family. And I'm a great believer, having once been a head of procurement, in that you use the market and you work with partners, because they're the guys who have the best ideas and the best approach. So every couple of years we run alongside our own partnerships that we have in place around projects. We're always looking for opportunities to deliver on our editorial strategy, which is to take people to the heart of sport, is to actually not just be a static broadcaster, but to deliver experiences as well, which is very prevalent at the moment. It was called Infinity Labs at the time, and this was the second round that we'd done, where we actually invite SMEs, small companies to come in who've got great ideas, to look at whether their ideas we think could fit within our ethos, and then for us to actually commit to supporting them, working with them, and launching their product. But at the same time, it's very interesting listening to that previous discussion. Our absolute ambition is to also support and help those companies, because whatever we do for BT Sport in a UK territory adds credence and strength to their product on a worldwide stage. So and these guys came in and nailed it, and they won with what is a very simple very simple idea, but bloody hard to deliver, actually, really hard to deliver. And I'm thrilled that we've managed to get it out the door.
Yeah, it's especially timely. I think you obviously kind of alluded to the last year in particular, but do you think the circumstances of last year have really accelerated the work that you're doing together? And do you think that what's happened in the last sort of now year has really kind of changed the way that consumers want to engage with platforms, with content? And how do you see that kind of evolving further as we kind of move into a post-COVID space?
Yeah, I think it's always a difficult discussion talking about COVID, because it's such a terrible situation we find ourselves in. But from innovation, it actually has driven you to think differently, because let's be perfectly frank, we can't leave our homes really, but elite sport is still happening. So I see our job is creating experiences like we've got our AR portal where you can go behind the scenes at a stadium. We bring the sounds of the stadium into your home with Dolby Atmos. We've got lots of these initiatives, and Watch Together is one of those. But to be really clear, we've been working together since 2018. So what I would say is we are lucky, if you can say lucky, with this pandemic, around the timing of the work that our two teams have done to be able to launch it at a time when it is most prevalent, when you can't go to a game. But through BT Sport, powered by Sceenic, we are enabling people to go to games live together, to have those experiences together. And this was always our long-term ambition, because long-term, I do think people want to have those shared experiences. Sport is about a shared viewing experience. It's not about being on your own. It's about that banter, that being involved. So I think you'd agree, Jonathan. I think teams have been working really hard for a good couple of years, and fantastic timing that we're able to bring this when you can't physically go to a stadium to watch a live game.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, Jonathan, it'd be great to kind of get your perspective on that, because obviously, you're a smaller, more agile company. You're able to kind of come in and really bring that on the ground, grassroots understanding of customer needs, the quick and agile response. I mean, really enhancing that experience that obviously, Jamie and the team there are trying to deliver. So it'd be great to kind of understand, from your perspective, and for those listening, what really are the benefits that you could deliver to larger organizations from that kind of agility, customer understanding perspective, and how have you seen that shift in the last sort of year?
Yeah, well, I'll have to say that probably BT is an exception to the rule, as Jamie pointed out. Like, they're very innovative and they're always looking to bring new stuff to the market, and actually they're the reference for many other companies around the world. And that is a fact. So when Sceenic goes to any client, like in outside the UK, and they see that we're working with BT, they take that as a reference. Like, you guys are working with one of the most innovative companies in the world, which is great. So for us has been amazing. Now, from our perspective as a startup, as a small company working with big companies, and what we can bring to the table. Mm. And a small company has the opportunity to be very close to the public. So when it comes to innovation, sometimes for big companies or big corporates, like the problem for them, they take longer to move, right? And it takes a lot of resources from a big company to be dedicated to understand particular behaviors on people. So what a startup can bring to the table, what in this case Sceenic brings to the table, is that ability to move fast, that ability to be close to what is happening in the market in terms of technology, in terms of innovation. And when a big corporate partners with a small company and startup, like, they can leverage that agility that the small company has, which when they come together and they manage to work together, is the perfect combination. Because you have all the experience and all the power that a big corporate has, and you have all the agility that a small company has as well. So that's a really good combination, because they can help each other. We have to say that we have been incredible, pleased to work with BT. Like, all the challenges that we overcame, on this work that we have done together for the past, it's going to be like 3.5 years now since we started working. It's incredible. Coming from a B2C company, very, very small back in Latin America, to be a software provider for a company such as BT Sport and now other clients around the world, it's great. But that wouldn't be possible if BT didn't believe in us early enough to bring this to the market. But with that said, yes, I think the incredible advantage that a small company brings to a corporate, it's one, being close to what is happening in terms of technology and advances in technology, and being close to the users as well, and being able to move fast. I think that's a big advantage.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm getting a real sense, and I think, it's quite clear, and I know I've spoken to the team at Sceenic and things, the partnership is so mutual and evident mutually beneficial, but there's a real degree, and I think, you know, we talked about it, or they talked about it in the previous session, and we talk about it a lot in open innovation, where there are kind of challenges around kind of the corporate attitude and the engagement, and it can cause real blockers. But quite clearly, Jamie, you and the team are doing something right to kind of really, you know, grease the wheels, make sure that it's really streamlined and seamless in terms of that engagement, in order to make sure that it's mutually beneficial. I mean, for those larger organizations kind of listening and thinking about kind of how to make their own activity effective, what kind of structure, processes, leadership's required to really make that, to drive that forward?
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I actually don't see us as a big corporate, because you associate BT and BT Sport, but we're a very small element of BT, so a broadcaster within a telco. So we get all the benefits of that big telco. And I'm a great believer, it's all about leadership, actually, and organizations move as fast as you allow them to. And I genuinely believe that. So I, COO BT Sport, I lead on our innovation stuff, and I'm sure Jonathan will back me up if I think something's right. There are no barriers. We work together. Relationships for me are absolutely critical, and having the right relationships, the right remuneration. So it's not good old procurement where you screw your suppliers. It's about having a balanced relationship. It's about understanding the responsibilities I have to promote Sceenic, to support Sceenic, and I do that with all of our partners, because we all need to succeed. And if we all succeed together, and we all enjoy that, it makes a huge difference. And I'm really proud of our track record. And you know, we launched some fantastic products during the summer, but the Watch Together is right up there because it's personal. We all know each other really well, and we trust each other. And I think it's that trust, it's that element of trust. And you know, sometimes things go wrong, Lauren. It happens. You know, if things go wrong, they go wrong. Sometimes deadlines can be missed, then they're missed. And I always think if you celebrate failure together, if you accept that the world isn't perfect, you create an environment that allows people to be brave. And that's probably the summary. If you're asking me for one word about what you need to do, you need to be brave, and just believe in what you're doing.
Yeah, which can be challenging if you've got kind of hard deadlines and budget restraints and things like that. So I think you're right. It comes down to leadership and culture really more than anything, which I know obviously Amali and Nick were really talking about, and kind of that philosophy and making sure that everyone's kind of on that journey, you know, with you and what you're trying to achieve. I mean, I think what's quite interesting really is this idea that you guys have been working together for a lot longer than perhaps is like necessarily evident from the way, you know, the public view of it. So, you know, 2018, you already started these conversations, you know, you were ahead of the curve in a way. And you know, Jonathan's mentioned how innovative as an organization you guys are. You know, how are you staying ahead of the trends, making sure that you really know what's coming in terms of that customer expectation, consumer experiences, the demands around that? I mean, do you think had COVID not happened that this Watch Together kind of technology would have been rolled out?
Yes, it would have been rolled out. Everything we roll out has a future. Watch Together was actually rolled out for the future, but was very timely for today. I think there's a couple of things. So firstly, everything we do is around that editorial strapline. So we don't do things to be first, but you know, let's be really clear here. We're the first in the world to 4K, first to HDR, first to 8K, first to 360, first to Dolby Atmos. All of those elements come with partners. So, you know, we've worked with Dolby to launch Dolby Atmos for the first time in 2017. So we've got this is what we want to deliver, which is about taking people to the heart of sport. It's about giving them experiences, not just a flat viewing experience. And we've got lots of exciting plans. You know, we did the first 8K live broadcast of Europa League match, partnering with Samsung. We launched a match day experience, which Watch Together is part of, in conjunction with EE and 4 other partners alongside Sceenic. We're looking at things like object-based broadcasting around personalization. And again, the way to succeed is to build the right partnerships and trust your partners, because there's no capital on a good idea. You can't own a good idea. What we have to do is we nurture the environment to bring people in. And you know, people like Jonathan are really important to me. Sceenic are really important to me, because to see Sceenic succeed means other organizations will be looking at us going, actually, there's an opportunity here. We've got a great idea. There's an opportunity. It's really important for me that everything we've done with Jonathan, he can take to every other broadcaster. I'm only UK centric. So why try and own that? Why try and own all the IP? Why try and stop that? So it's very much the previous question about open sourcing, but it's about open development and innovation. We have the capital in the UK market. Outside of that, we're supportive, we give references. A lot of the stuff we've helped in developing, the synchronization aspects and that, Jonathan owns. Now, you know, it's not for me to own it. And I think Sceenic are the proof in the pudding, because if Jonathan's still in business in 2 years and doing extremely well, which I'm sure he will be, that demonstrates to these small companies that actually some of these bigger guys do listen. It's not about investment, it's about the right support, and it's about those relationships.
Yeah, no, completely. I mean, you can almost, you know, make a magnet out of yourself in a way if you do it really well, and you kind of create ambassadors and this kind of attitude and recognition in the market, and more kind of innovative companies that, you know, they're going to want to come and work with you guys. So you're going to always be ahead of the trends in that sense. I mean, obviously, you know, Jonathan, Jamie, they're just sort of mentioning about your growth and kind of the opportunity to take it globally. I mean, what does kind of a partnership like this do for a smaller company that, you know, needs that potentially kind of international or kind of a brand with them to kind of give them that recognition, and you know, what do you think the long-term impact will be of this collaboration for you?
Well, I need to start by saying that, you know, what a partnership like this one brings to a small company like ours is like, probably we wouldn't be like, you know, alive or in the market without a partnership like BT Sport, you know. So for when you're in a small company, you're trying to bring something that is disruptive, that it's aiming to change how things are happening in the market. It's really hard to do it if you don't have the right partner to do so. You know, being our own, like it wouldn't be possible to be having this conversation today, and that's the truth. You know, Jamie just mentioned that like one of the biggest challenges that we overcame together, and that's synchronization. You know, when you're watching a game, like you don't want to have one of your friends like, you know, screaming goal, like when you're like what's happening here. Like you all need not just to see each other while you're watching the content, but you need to be synchronized as well. And people might think, oh, that's easy. That is not easy. Like when you have a different device, if you're using an iPhone and you're using an Android, like they all have different speeds. You know, if you're using your internet at home and your mate is watching on a mobile network, they have different speeds. So latency becomes a massive problem for a service like ours. So and that challenge is just possible to be overcome when you work with a partner like BT Sport. And so not easy for a company, for a small company to survive without a good partnership. Now, how we see not just the partnership, but how we see our company like into the future. Now that we worked with BT Sport for the past 3.5 years, and the market it's open for Sceenic. Now we have clients in the US. Now we have clients in Germany. We have clients in Oceania and many other places. You know, what we see is that actually what we thought it was a great idea and BT Sport helped us to bring out to the market is what unfortunately is needed right now. And as Jamie pointed out as well, like it was always the intention to bring this technology out to the market since we started working. It's just a matter of timing. So of course, right now is the right time to be out. But we are as a company, as Sceenic, we're working in new stuff. Like we're bringing soon something that we call Sceenic View, which is a sensor pack and it's a cloud-based service which will allow the clients that have you know, set-top boxes and smart TVs to bring video conferencing to the clients. You know, it's a way to upgrade what they're already offering to the clients. So that's something that is coming out very, very soon. And what we see is like, you know, for us is about engagement. For us is about bringing people together And all the work that we will continue doing is around that. We will enhance that experience together with BT, together with our new clients, to bring the best of sharing and social viewing within their platforms.
Brilliant. I mean, yeah, I'm excited to see where it goes. I mean, we're pretty much out of time, but we've got quite a few questions from the audience, but I'm going to choose a small one to get both kind of your immediate thoughts on. So, small businesses, it's really hard kind of looking from the outside in. How on earth do you kind of go about finding the right person that's going to kind of make it a reality? How do you do that? Sort of perspectives from both sides would be great. So maybe Jonathan, you want to kick us off?
Can you repeat the question?
How do you kind of go about finding the right person in a larger organization to collaborate with if you're a small company on the outside looking in?
Wow. If I tell you the truth, like from my perspective, is just knocking doors all the time.
Yeah.
Like if you target an organization and what you have to do is to knock doors. Like, you probably can start, from the top or from the bottom, but you have to knock many doors and never give up. Like that's from the startup perspective, right? Because it is hard for you to go to a person like Jamie and say like, hey, I have a great idea. They have thousands of companies. Great, yeah. And saying like, yeah, we have a great idea. I think persistence. I think knocking many doors and trying to understand from the corporate perspective, who's the person that is actually looking for that innovation, who's the person that pushes innovation within that company. In this case, like is Jamie, is the person that is leading all these crazy innovative stuff within BT Sports. So I think you have to first knock a lot of doors and target who's the right person that is pushing innovation, and try to get to that person. I'll say that's the way from my perspective.
Easier said than done, maybe, Jamie, but I'd love to get your thoughts from the other side. How do you like innovation to come to you?
I agree with everything Jonathan said. From a big sports system, we're very flat. So if you type big sport innovation, you'll find me somewhere on Google. I am a great believer in these sorts of forums where actually because the people speaking at these forums tend to be the people who have the influence internally to do that. I always have one bit of advice for people though, and it's a really difficult one. If you've got a great idea, people will listen. But if you haven't looked at what that organization already does, you may find that you insult or upset people like myself very quickly. So that's always my advice to everyone is please understand, for instance, we're called BT Sport, not BT Sports, because that drives distraction. But also don't come into me with an idea about something we're already doing. Look at what we're doing. And that I think applies to any organization. Look at what we're doing and come in. When you have that discussion, when you're tabling that idea, come from a position of knowledge, because it makes people like me, we sit up and we're like, right, so they know what we're doing. They've obviously got some idea here that will either enhance what we're doing or enable us to do that differently. And we want to succeed. And we want to be available for those people who have the ideas, who understand our ethos. So for me, it's about networking, definitely, because you find out who those people are. Persistence is absolutely critical, because I'm busy, people are busy. Doesn't mean you're being ignored. It tends to mean there's a very long list of stuff to get through. But understand the organization you're talking to. Don't just come across as cold calling because you've got a great idea.
Yeah, I think that's the best piece of advice, to be honest. I mean, so often we see that, I just want to speak to X because I know my product will be of interest, and it's, do your homework. So I think, so persistence, do your homework, and have a great product, and you'll be fine, everyone. But I'm going to wrap us up for this afternoon. Thank you both so much for joining us. I know we've had, like I say, lots of engagement on the chat. So thank you both so much. It's been brilliant to have you. And I'm going to hand now over to my colleague Janet.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Lauren. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Jonathan. Wow, what a refreshing conversation. I absolutely loved it. There's so many takeaways from that, and I found I found it really refreshing, actually, particularly to hear Jamie talk about leadership and just his whole values around how to connect with startups, balancing the relationship, and then also, you know, well, Jamie and Jonathan, but Jonathan talked about leveraging agility of the startup, and then celebrate failure together. Love it. It was so inspiring, but so many useful takeaways. So thank you so much to both of you. I mean, I can't wait as a consumer to be able to be collaborating with my probably my family up north while we're watching BT Sport. So thank you for joining us today. Brilliant. So my name's Janet Coyle. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Managing Director for Business at London & Partners. And I've sort of co-created the Innovation Fellowship with Lauren and with Laura, who you met earlier, and with the RCA, with Professor Nick de León and others. So we're thrilled to have you all with us this afternoon. I'm even more thrilled, if you like, to be introducing our next panel. Now, the topic of the next panel is, I would say, extremely topical. Given what we're all facing at the moment with the pandemic and what's on our sort of news screens every day, and it absolutely should be, and that's around not only food waste, but how do we get food to the people in need, and how do we get it to them efficiently. And you must have had your sort of head buried if you haven't sort of seen the news in the last few days. But I'm absolutely thrilled to have with us today a brilliant panel. We've got 3 guest speakers who are all women. We've got Sasha Celestial One. Now Sasha is the co-founder and COO of Olio. And if you don't have Olio downloaded onto your phone, I suggest you do it now or do it after today's session. It's the most brilliant app. It's basically an app that's completely harnessing power of technology, but to provide a solution to the problem of food waste. We all use it in our neighbourhood. I know lots and lots of people. In fact, the app and the business is growing extremely quickly. They've got over 50,000 volunteers. And since 2016, 2.7 million Olio users, or Olioers, Sasha can tell me how to say this, have successfully shared over 9 million portions of food in 54 countries. All you have to do, if you're going off on holiday or even at the end of the week and you've got some peppers or some food that you just think you're not going to use, you just put it up on the app and people in the local area can come and take it and use it. But excitingly, they probably about a year ago now formed a really impactful partnership with Tesco. And we've been sort of watching this develop over the months. So we invited them to join us today. So I'm thrilled that we've got Claire de Silva with us, who's head of community and local media at Tesco, leading a team of 9 people delivering multi-million-pound programmes that support thousands of local communities across the UK. She also leads a number of really big media campaigns. And we've also got Nicola Mackay, who's leading Tesco's operational strategy on food redistribution and also food poverty. They've got 2 really key community programs that all this sort of work is centred on, particularly around the Trussell Trust and something called Fair Share that I'm sure we'll hear more about this afternoon. But Nicola has also led Tesco's operational response to the COVID crisis. And with Fair Share and the Trussell Trust, they managed to provide an additional £90 million worth of food to allow their operations to keep running in the face of this unprecedented demand that we're all aware of. So absolutely brilliant. And Tesco don't shout about this. They just get on, and they're doing some incredible work. So welcome. Hope they're all with us. Yes, I can see Sasha, I can see Nicola. Fabulous. And I'll present Claire as well. Hi all of you. Thrilled to have you with us. I'm very excited about this. It's a topic very close to my heart. So I'm going to kick off, I think, with Claire, if that's okay. So many questions to ask you all, and I'm sure we'll be getting questions in the chat as well. So Claire, I mentioned this fantastic partnership that's been developed with Olio. Can you just tell us a little bit about the background and if you were actually seeking to solve a problem with food waste and how you came across this brilliant technology app?
Sure, of course. Thank you so much for having us. I hope you can hear me okay. So maybe it might be helpful just to give you a bit of context really about what our programs do. We kind of talk about these multi-million programs, which feels a bit overwhelming, but actually our Tesco food surplus redistribution program was really formed in response to a need to reduce food surplus from retail. It was a government request really, which began for us back in 2015 when we started working with FareShare and Food Cloud and developing our own food surplus redistribution program that we call Community Food Connection. And you're right, we don't really get a lot of airtime for it, perhaps as much as we should, but we're working on that. So, and at the time, that was a hugely innovative step forward for the business. But for background and everyone's information, Tesco used that program and that process to inform local charities how much surplus food we have in our stores at the end of the day. That's in every single one of our stores across our network. And we use a FareShare partnership with Food Cloud and an app so that information is passed across. So we were quite innovative back in the day when we launched that. The charity picks that food up free of charge, turns it into meals for people. But while they're doing an incredible job, and it's amazing to think that actually we redistribute about 2 million meals a month to around 7,000 or 8,000 charities, there are still areas where the charity sector does struggle to collect. Many of our charities don't really have the facilities to collect or store chilled food, and others only really operate during term time. So we knew there was an issue and then there was something that we needed to do to alleviate that problem and develop a sort of a robust process really to ensure that all our stores could have as minimal surplus food left as possible, and we could ensure as much surplus food as possible was redistributed to families and individuals and people who really need it in our communities, particularly now more so than ever really. And so, we're always looking for opportunities to innovate, as you can kind of tell. And so really that's where Olio came along. And maybe Nick can tell you a little bit about sort of where that came from.
Yeah, certainly. So as Claire said, we were working with FareShare and they were doing a fabulous job, but there's always pockets or areas of the country where there are challenges. So it might be that there's kind of no parking. It might be that small stores don't have as much surplus. So we were just looking at other ways, and we had a few conversations with different partners. In fact, we had actually worked with Olio 2 years ago. We did a really small trial in 2 stores, and it was working really well. But I think we weren't kind of at the position to move on. So we'd only just finished rolling out with FareShare, so we were still kind of quite new into that process, and we needed to make sure that it was all embedded. So when Sasha approached us again and was like, "Oh, we've really grown in the last 2 years since we last saw you. Can we come and talk to you again?" Then we absolutely jumped at the chance. And yeah, we had a really good conversation, and it sort of all went from there. And it was clear that actually Olio were in a brilliant place now, and we were in the right place, and it just kind of all came together.
Gosh, incredible. So we heard from our last panel about this sort of persistence of the entrepreneur sort of keeping knocking on the door, but it sounds like you had quite a good sort of pilot with Sasha and probably Tessa early on. If you can sort of put your mind back to 2 years ago then, or 3 years ago, when you had that pilot, was it them approaching you, or were you actually scouting around looking for the right technology to help you solve this problem? Can you remember? You might not be able to remember, so don't worry if you can't.
I think they probably approached us. But Sasha can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they probably did. But it was a really interesting, kind of opportunity to trial that. But like I say, it was only in 2 stores and it was very, very small. And there was quite a few operational challenges at the time that we've now obviously moved, and the technology has moved on, our processes have moved on, and then certainly Olio as a kind of business has moved on as well.
Thanks, James.
Before I bring Sasha back to Nicola or Claire, I'm very conscious when corporates, you know, the size of Tesco, take on something new like this, it's sometimes quite challenging to disseminate the idea and get the buy-in from within the organisation. You know, how challenging was that? Or did you have to do a lot of sort of championing of the technology with your colleagues leading up to the trial or post-trial, or how did all that work within your infrastructure?
Shall I do that one? Yeah, so there was a fair bit of kind of internal conversations and discussions we had to have. So I think because we'd worked with Olio before, there was not so much of who they are. There was a little bit of that because obviously people in the business have changed. You know, the structure of the people that were working at the time have all changed. So there was quite a lot of, it was kind of getting people to understand that we weren't replacing or changing our food distribution model at all. So there was a little bit of kind of concern that we were actually sort of replacing the charities we're working with, which was not at all. This was simply just to kind of take it that step further and to make sure that we were actually kind of redistributing more food.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was a few kind of conversations that we had to have internally, and also it was really, really important for the stores to make sure that it fitted into our current process. So the process we have in stores for Olio and charities is exactly the same. So there's no extra work. It fits into all of our technical processes and all of our reduction processes already. So that was really, really important. Yeah, so that was kind of the conversations we had to sort of have before we could get it signed off.
I mean, that's also very refreshing to hear. You don't always hear that a startup manages to fit in with the can be quite cumbersome processes and governance that you have in these big corporates. So it's great to hear that it wasn't, I mean, it was probably a little bit challenging, but it wasn't too difficult to actually show how it was going to build and complement the other charity work, and it wasn't replacing anything that people have been working years on. So that's great. So Sasha, let's bring you in. I mean, should we just start by you just explaining, probably in a better way than I did, about Olio and the app, just for those people on the call who may never have heard of it. Do you want to just give a little bit of high-level explanation?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And I've been sitting here while this tickle mounts in my throat for the first time in a long time. So hopefully it goes away as I talk. But I think you did a pretty good job of describing the app. When we launched across the UK in early 2016, we were very, very, very focused on unlocking the value of food waste that takes place in the home specifically, because surprising to many people, actually more than half of all food waste takes place in the homes. You know, retailers like Tesco are very motivated to reduce food waste in their operations. But actually at the individual and household level, there's a relatively big disconnect between sort of what people think they waste and what they actually waste. And so we thought that a simple app connecting people with food to spare directly with people nearby could help to address that in a social, fun, and really straightforward way. We didn't anticipate that we would be working at scale with retailers. But what happened was that we thought businesses, small businesses, bakeries, et cetera, would add their surplus food at the end of the day themselves, rather than having it go to waste, because that's a very painful sort of thing to do. And maybe it would attract new customers. But the reality is small businesses are way too busy to use the app themselves. But we saw, you know, sort of regular people from the community recognize that they could disintermediate that waste and go and pick up the food from the businesses and then share it on the app themselves. And that sort of happened quite organically. And then what we saw is that people who were new to the community, who might be just a bit skeptical about sort of sharing surplus food with a stranger, collecting food that had a price tag on it just a few minutes ago or a few hours ago was a much lower barrier to transactional usage. It was a way to start participating in food sharing and food rescuing without necessarily having to maybe, you know, have that leap of faith of collecting someone's half a head of broccoli or something like that. And then we saw that once someone came in and they had a successful experience, they picked up food from their neighbor, they were just, it was a magical experience. Their eyes were wide open and they really were, you know, people would say, this is amazing. Why didn't we have this before? And it inspired them to share from their own home and also to be more open-minded about rescuing food from their neighbors. So for us, we thought that collecting food from retailers could strategically help us to accelerate our mission of unlocking the food that the waste that happens in the home. I definitely stalked Tesco anywhere I could find a senior leader speaking, or a panel, or networking, any type of event where I could see Dave Lewis and sort of stand in a queue to talk to him and tell him about Olio. I really did do. And subsistence is definitely part of the game in the early days. And when we did our 2-store trial 2 years ago, I made the pitch to roll out nationally, and I explained to them how we would do that. We were a handful of people, a very small community, and there's no way we could have done that. But I think the key thing with Tesco specifically is that well before any other retailers did, they made a public pledge to reduce edible store waste across all of their stores. And we could see that the charitable sector was not able to absorb all of the surplus food for the reasons that Claire and Nikki have described. And so we sort of had the mentality of, it's just a matter of time, unless they want to renege on their public pledge, that they will arrive at the sensible conclusion that they're going to need to partner with us. And in the meantime, we developed our Food Waste Heroes program and turned it into a really world-class, innovative sort of volunteer matching system so that we can efficiently redistribute food at scale. I think, just to put things in perspective, with Tesco over Christmas, we had just under 12,000 volunteer collections, collecting 150,000 tons of food, which was all sort of distributed for free to just regular, ordinary people in the Olio community. So that's a very fast.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you how it works in practice, the partnership. So when you got your 50,000 volunteers, and they've all got the Olio app, and that's how they're doing the collection, knowing which store to go to and knowing where to deliver it to, or is there a third party?
No, so just fair at the most simple level, we do have lots of volunteers, but we have just over 10,000 food waste heroes, which are volunteers who we assign, or they're matched with a day, time, and store where there's surplus available because the charity is not available. And they arrive at the store, they show their badge, they take the food straight home, and they add it to the app. Their neighbors request the food, and within the same evening, because it's almost always the same use by food, the neighbors come around, pick up the food, and it's divided up amongst members of the general public. Often it is people who are in food insecure situations, but we're specifically don't focus on that because one of the things that people who are in those situations, one of the things they value about Olio is that they can get access to food in an anonymous and stigma-free way. So we don't want to make it feel like a charitable handout. We much more focus on reducing food waste and connecting neighbors.
Which is brilliant, absolutely. So we heard earlier from Nicola. I think what's really nice about this conversation is, even though you were stalking Tesco and probably everybody in the HQ of Tesco, it didn't come across that way, because Nicola can't remember you really stalking them or banging on the door all the time. And we also heard from Claire and Nicola about the processes and how Olio seamlessly managed to integrate into their internal processes. How did it feel for you, Sasha? Did it feel as straightforward as that?
I mean, I don't think it ever occurred to us that we were going to dictate processes with Tesco. So it wasn't even a consideration. I think it was, even if we had to do things in the beginning, especially during the very first 2-store trial, we did everything manually, right? It was very, very, very not scalable. We had sort of 6 people looking at different WhatsApps on, we just didn't make it. We had to do it manually, but I think we'll probably talk about this later, but that's the onus is on the startup to make it as easy as possible to test your innovation and partnership so that you can get a case study. Because once you've got some information, even if behind the scenes it was super messy, the study doesn't need to reflect all of that. The case study shows it worked. These are the results. These are the testimonials. And you've got basically an arsenal of information that you can then use to sell in expansion. So I do think it was really, the onus was on us. It wasn't easy the first time, but it didn't matter because we were up for the challenge.
Brilliant. I mean, we talked earlier, Claire, about, you being relatively modest about this fantastic work you've already been doing together with government and together with the industry, and there's 2 charities that you specifically work with, and now Olio. Now with this partnership with this fantastic tech company, do you have a sort of, are you changing your outlook on this? And do you have some quite ambitious plans now, both not just for promoting what you do, but more about where you could take this, both in London and nationally?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's Tesco, so, you know, we're driving innovation in hundreds of ways across the business that, you know, we don't even know about half the time, you know, really. And so when we sort of first started off, you know, and where we've got to now is really, you know, we're looking at Europe's arguably biggest food redistribution program. So, you know, we want to do more and broaden our reach all the time. And I think the business recognised the benefit that the partnership with Olio played, and the fact that we could demonstrate that impact, and I think really for us that's what we want to do more. We don't really want to change the model or do anything differently, but what we do want to do is enable our stores and what we do to really drive change and to help more people. And I think that's very much the kind of ethos, certainly, of what we're thinking here, and where we form partnerships that have that ambition and that, you know, that ability to make change. So the long-term impact of working with exciting innovators, I guess, like Olio, is to do that, to sort of change behaviour, attitude of our customers, customer habits, you know, all as part of that focus on reducing food waste, whether that's in the home or in our stores, you know, and really enable people to get quickly set up to do that. So to really be an enabler. And I think that's really what we're really keen to do across the whole business, not just in our space, but clearly more. And I can't speak for the innovation team. I'm sure they've got huge amounts of exciting stuff right up their sleeves, but that's kind of what we were thinking. And I guess really for London, you know, we found it really hard to redistribute surplus food from our stores in London, as Nicky's alluded to, really. I mean, sort of about a third of our convenience estate, that's probably about 450 stores are in London, and there's a lack of charities there. As we've said, you know, high rents, lack of affordable premises. So, you know, there was a real issue there, and there still is. And so we really want to support where we can, where it's needed, and innovators like this can help us do that.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting you say that just about all the stores. I remember when Deliveroo first set out, and Will Shue was he spent so much time just on one postcode. You know, he really wanted to get that right before he started to expand, and there was lots of people trying to take Deliveroo international. He was like, no, I haven't nailed this one postcode yet. And, you know, it sounds like it was similar for you in a way. Did you start off in really making sure you were getting this right? I mean, as Sasha was saying, it sounded a bit like all hands on deck and doing it quite physically until you knew that the technology was going to really work. So I suppose it depends on the product, doesn't it? But was it in sort of phases like that? Nicola might have or Sasha might sort of have a...
I'm going to unmute myself. Yes, absolutely. So we started off, so the second kind of iteration of Olio, we started off in our kind of top 250 stores that had the most surplus and the most kind of the least charity coverage. So we were filling in all the gaps, really. It was a bit like a puzzle. So we started off, and it was quite different. So obviously we were pretty confident that Olio was going to work in London, because, you know, that's fairly proven. We were quite excited about starting off in London, but also quite confident that it would work. That was part of our trial, because it was one of the stores in London, and we kind of had proved that, you know, proved the concept in one store. But what we really wanted to do, and we did set Sasha, I remember the conversation we had with Sasha, we set her a bit of a challenge when she was like, yeah, we could do this many stores. And we were like, yeah, we want you to do 250 stores kind of by, you know, 6 weeks. And it was a bit like, okay. But at no point did she say no. At no point did they say no, despite the fact I'm sure that the
never say no.
The swan with the legs going frantically underneath the water, but at no point did they say no. And I know it was a massive challenge, and there was lots of people that were brought on very quickly. There was lots and lots of late nights. They've got an amazing team, Ollie. They are like just brilliant, and there was lots of late nights for them. There was a few teething issues, you know, but to be honest, they delivered everything they said they were going to deliver. They did brilliantly. So and then that was kind of the point where we'd done the trial and we were like, right, okay, now where do we take this? And we've tested them pretty much all over the country, from almost Highland Scotland down to Cornwall, to see what they could do. So yeah, we definitely were pretty challenging.
That was a year ago, wasn't it? I can't believe it.
Exactly.
Where's that gone?
And that was before we knew we were going to be hit by this global pandemic. I mean, what impact has that had? Have you felt that you had to accelerate things because of the need?
Yeah, I think it kind of has, well, it's accelerated quite a lot of stuff. So we've had a lot of challenges. So our current charities that we work with, as Claire said, it's around 7,000. And almost overnight, about 3,000 of them dropped off. So a lot of them are term time charities anyway. All the schools shut. So all your after school clubs or your breakfast clubs shut straight away. Also, you have a lot of charities that are doing lunch clubs and lots of face-to-face meetups, and all of that had to stop. And I think a lot of the charities were kind of had to take stock, had to stop, take stock and go, right, how do we do this now? So that's where kind of Olio were really good, that, you know, they were able to step in and take a lot of these slots. The other thing was that we had the Nightingale hospitals. So the Nightingale hospitals sprung up almost overnight, and Tesco really quickly opened 2 temporary stores, one in Birmingham and one in the XL. And we were speaking to Fairshare. Poor Fairshare was so snowed under with all these charities dropping off and going up. And so we asked Olio if they could help us redistribute surplus food from the Nightingale shops. And I think within 2 weeks, we had a complete food surplus redistribution model based on what we were already doing in the 2 shops, redistributing surplus food to NHS staff who were coming out of the hospitals, and also obviously to people in the local community where we couldn't do that. But it was really, I'm not saying agile, but it was like just really kind of quick. And that's kind of where they demonstrate their, you know, that they can just step up to it really, really quickly. I mean, there was also quite a lot of, as you can imagine, business challenges with COVID anyway. So we were supporting Fairshare and the Trust of Trusts, as you said, with all of the food donations and I think in total we donated.
It's a phenomenal story, Nicola. I mean, how you've embraced the technology, and I know you're a very innovative company, as Claire has said it right at the beginning, but to take that, almost to take that risk and to embrace the technology of Olio to really make a huge impact, you know, whether it's around the Nightingale hospitals or elsewhere. I'm really conscious of time, but I'm going to ask each of you if you could just give me maybe 1 sentence on, or maybe 2 sentences on, you know, what are your learnings from this? I think, you know, for Nicola and Claire, when you think about our audience today, we've got heads of innovation at corporates, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got, you know, members of our ecosystem who are really supportive of open innovation or keen to learn more about this, you know, open innovation and collaboration to innovate. If I could ask each of you, you know, what were the lessons learned that you could share with our audience today, or what did you wish you'd known when you set out on this journey and this partnership that could really help our audience? I'll probably start with Sasha as the entrepreneur who's been pedaling crazy to meet the demand of Tesco, but sounds like you're doing it brilliantly, Sasha. What's the big lessons that you've learned?
Well, when I think about sort of just corporate startup partnerships, I think we have a very much just get your foot in the door strategy. And even if it's just your tiniest little toenail, just get anything you can started, because so whoever you're working with, figure out what the smallest solution is that you can work towards testing or implementing in under 3 months, right? Because anything over 3 months is just really far away. Because once you've got a case study, as I sort of alluded to earlier, then you can give that the partner at the corporate ammunition to go in and share their success and showcase their innovation and get more buy-in, which could be a very long process. But in the meantime, you can say you've already worked with them, and you can say, oh, but we're partnering with Tesco, even if it's 2 stores, it's really manual and it ended after 4 weeks. that enabled us to go sell in the Food Waste Heroes program in the meantime to Pret a Manger, Selfridges, Compass Catering, loads and loads of other food businesses. And actually having that name recognition of a big brand, even if it's actually really, most people don't go into the details about what the partnership is. So I guess try not to aim too high.
Yeah.
Get your foot in the door, get a case study, and then you can use that to leverage that to sell in. The other thing that we do is we have and I encourage all entrepreneurs to do this, but we have a B2b Quarterly Newsletter. Anyone who emails me, even if they're just trying to sell me software, gets put on that newsletter. And we use that to celebrate all of our successes and our milestones and share, press articles so that, partners who might not be interested in working with you now might be when they see, 9 months later, when they see that you've had some kind of accomplishment or partnered with someone else. So I think having that really sort of consistent drip feed of good news keeps you top of mind when the time might be right.
Really,
so
really
that would be my
it's that discipline around keeping that momentum. Yeah. Thank you, Sasha. And Claire?
Gosh, I mean, I guess probably from a big corporate perspective, it's to innovators and to entrepreneurs to be brave and to be resilient and to be, to be really focused. As Sasha said, they identified the problem, they smashed it in terms of what we needed to do. They knew the market, they understood us. Having that, we don't want to wade through people who, as Jamie, I think, said previously, who don't really understand what the problem or the crux of the issue is that we have to solve, and we have very limited time. So I think that's important as a takeaway for me. We see so many people come through, and there's a difference between kind of knocking on doors and being slightly, pushy to being slightly annoying and not quite getting the, what's actually needed across. So that would be my ask, I guess.
Oh, fabulous. That's really, really good advice. And you heard that, everybody, from Claire de Silva. So I'm sure they'll all be knocking on your door, Claire, in the next few days. And Nicola, what have you learnt?
Yeah, I think that making sure that you kind of, this sounds such a corporate thing to say it, but taking people with you. Like, so when you're trying to sell it into the business, it's all great to have the great idea, but you need to kind of understand how it's actually going to work. So I think from my point of view, it was kind of like making sure that the right people across the business were engaged and making sure that they kind of like could see the benefit of why we were going to do this. Because there was, you can get the pushback, well, we're already doing this, why would you want to do something different? But, you never settle. You have to keep pushing on, don't you?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've been a brilliant champion within Tesco. I mean, for all of you corporates who are listening now, I mean, you've got to get that engagement to make sure that it lands well. And of course, when it's successful, everybody wants to celebrate the success, but you have to get those champions within your organization to really get behind that new technology. Wow, thank you so much, all three of you. It's been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation. I could talk for hours. As I say, it's a topic very close to my heart, but I'm sure we'll have lots of conversations in the future. Best of luck and success for the future success, because I can see this really, really building and going exponential. So good luck with continued rollout and success of this partnership. It's been fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tesco.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to spend a little bit of time now just sort of wrapping up really, and just going back to what Laura Citron said sort of right at the beginning of the session. I mean, we've heard from some brilliant speakers this afternoon. I feel quite honoured to have had them all join us really. And right, at the beginning when we had Nick de León and Amali, love the sort of conversation. I mean, Amali always talks and she really draws from her experience, doesn't she, of Code First Girls at Microsoft and everywhere, and just talking about the benefit of opening up innovation, but opening up your mind and opening up things. So you have this shared responsibility for innovation. And then you can, we heard in the next panel talk about, sharing the responsibility and celebrating failure together as well as celebrating success. And then this final panel we've just had on just such an important topic about how they managed to, really cement this partnership through pilots and trials. So I hope you will really enjoyed these conversations. I think we've really ultimately learned how important it is for open innovation. Businesses who do engage with open innovation are going to be more successful and actually thrive. And that's really why we created this Open Innovation Fellowship, because we learned through lots of conversations we had back in, I think, 2019, that lots of heads of innovation are probably out there trying to drive change on their own sometimes within big organizations. So we wanted to bring together this sort of peer group. So what it is it's really for senior level executives to really help them to take their innovation plans, ideas to the next level, but with a group of peers, with a group of sort of heads of innovation from different organizations. It's a 4-month exec education, but it's, when I say it's 4 months, it's a number of modules. So it's not 4 months out of your time. It's lots of short bursts, and particularly at the moment where we're delivering a lot of the content virtually together with the RCA. So you learn such a lot, but it's also quite a lot of fun in sharing experiences and sharing best practice, if you like, as well. So a lot of the fellows that we have on our current course have been really looking to how they can make that innovation more effective, but also how they can make it more inclusive and continue this sort of community of senior innovation leaders. And they're from across multiple sectors, which makes the conversations a lot more enriching. So as I said, we run this in partnership with the RCA, and the fellows graduate with a really comprehensive understanding of design thinking, innovation mindset, and a real specific action plan to fulfill their own open innovation ambitions when they sort of go back to their organizations while they're actually working through their organizations through the fellowship. They're also going to be having a real new and diverse and extensive network as well, because we connect these fellows to innovators, thought leaders, influencers right across our London ecosystem. And we do lots of sort of Discover London deep dives, so they really get to understand where London is innovating, how they're innovating, and how they can be a part of London's future, really. So we plan to send you a follow-up for all of you who have attended, so you can get a little bit more information on this. Do please let us know if you're interested, or if you know someone who might be interested. You know, share it with your colleagues. And really, it leaves me to say we would love to invite you on our journey to make London the most open city in the world for innovation. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you all and to have our guest speakers. And we will invite you to our next Open Innovations event in the series as well. So thanks again.